Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, and you are watching Loudwire.
Hey everyone, Graham from Loudwire here with Mr. Bruce Dickinson. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. And this is the book.
That's the book.
What Does This Button Do? A really great read. I've read so many autobiographies from musicians. This is absolutely top shelf.
Oh, so good stuff.
You.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great. It's
awesome.
Good. So,
So,
I want to go through sort of the Maiden timeline as told by this book a little bit.
Yeah.
First off, it surprised me very much to learn that right when Rod Smallwood came to you and said, hey, would you be interested in this position with Iron Maiden, you immediately knew the job's mine.
I made the assumption, which was kind of precocious, but I guess I wouldn't have got the job if I wasn't that way inclined to begin with. You're going to be fronting a major heavy metal band which is already #1 and going around doing stadiums and things like that. Well, it was actually not stadiums then, but yes, I take your point.
Getting there, yeah.
Getting there, yeah.
For sure. So I guess you figured he wouldn't be wasting my time unless he thought I could really do this.
You didn't need to have the tea leaves read to go and figure out what was probably going to go on. And I wanted to make sure that I was exactly the sort of guy he wanted. And I made the assumption that one of the reasons they wanted a completely different type of singer was they wanted a completely different type of singer in every respect.
Yeah.
So I made it quite clear that I had opinions. If you don't like them, then you can argue about them, but you're going to have to tolerate the fact that I will come up with ideas and opinions and things, and then you might not agree with them, but.
And you described that when you walked into that rehearsal studio for the first time, you felt like Iron Maiden's morale was at a very low point.
Well, they'd been working an awful lot. They'd been under a lot of stress and pressure and everything. And clearly the relationship with, the old singer, with Paul, had kind of broken down. And that was a real problem, because when you've got the lead singer and it's not working right, then that gets everybody in a bit of a bad position, all the way around the block. I just went in there and thought, I think we should have some fun, and so we sang lots of songs, and we sang lots of songs that we all knew mutually as just a bit of fun. And everybody seemed to cheer up, so I thought, well, this is a good start,
And thanks to the wonders of YouTube, we're able to actually listen to the audio of your audition, your rehearsal.
Yeah, that was the second one.
Okay.
Because what happened was we just went into a straightforward rehearsal room, and we never recorded anything there. We just played, and I just sang over backing tapes that they already had. They were live tracks, and in the great Rod Smallwood tradition of never letting anything go to waste, he promptly put it out as an EP shortly thereafter, claiming it was me. And in fact, there's one bit on I think there's a song called Remember Tomorrow, where you can, Paul, who was the original vocalist on it, is doing some ad-libs into the crowd. And it's obviously his voice, not mine.
Yeah.
So I had, because it's on the audience microphones, there's not a lot you can do about it. So I had to go and grunt and sort of go, "Are you doing all right?" or something like that to try and cover it up. And it's not done very well. Enjoyed the hell out of it. And that was it. They said, "Okay, you're hired." Then we all went out and got drunk to celebrate.
I can imagine Iron Maiden's morale lifting considerably after they initially heard your scream in Wrathchild when you hit that high note.
We were on a high throughout that entire process of writing and recording Number of the Beast. I mean, we were all super jolly, and I mean, everybody was just delighted. There was no stress around that album at all. Or if there was, I don't think any of us felt it, because we were just having so much fun.
Yeah. I think, well, there was definitely one point of stress during the Number of the Beast song in the recording studio where you had to sing those two first verses.
Oh yeah,
again and again.
Yeah. Well, that was when Martin got into my head, which he's very good at doing as a producer, which is why he's one of the reasons why he's such a great producer. And he said, look, he said, I did the same thing with Ronnie Dio. I said, Ronnie came in with Heaven and Hell, and thought, I can knock these couple of lines out in a few seconds. It's just straightforward stuff. And of course, Ronnie's is an amazing singer. And so I said, what lines were they? He said, well, it's the first two lines of Heaven and Hell. Sing me a song, you're a singer. He said, now go and sing those two lines like you're summing up your entire life in the first two lines of the song. And that took some time. I was throwing furniture around the studio and going, yes. What exactly is it that you want? And it happened. And actually, when you have a moment like that, and the what I call a light bulb moment, and ding, and it goes on, you go, I get it, I think. And you then transfer that to things you do subsequently.
Well, that's one of the great parts of the book, is that you're really able to transport the reader into that moment. You can really feel that moment. You talk about the frustration of it, the cinematic nature of what you wanted to grab and just thrust into that song. And eventually you broke through your ego and finally made it, and it was perfect. And I wanted to know, even to this day, performing that on stage, do you feel a little bit of that studio tension or that cinema feeling that you felt in the studio?
It's not even as literal as an image in front of you, but it's an image that's somewhere in the back of your head playing away, because what you're doing is you're describing something as you sing it. And it's the same way I wrote the book. A lot of people say, oh my God, you must have an incredible memory. And I was like, well, I don't think I do, actually. But I have a very cinematic memory for things. So I'm shocking at dates and names and things like that, because I tend to dump all that information, because what's important is how you felt about something at the time, and what it felt like to be there. It wasn't so important that I could remember in exact detail the timeline, because actually I can use Wikipedia for that, and there are plenty of people who are like real super geeks who have written shopping lists of every single thing that ever happened to us since the year dot. So you can access that kind of information, but that doesn't tell you how it felt. And so with a book, you want to be able to almost open the pages and say, yeah, I can smell how it felt. I can feel the tension, and and so that was the intention. So it's, as a exercise in memory, that's the way my memory tends to work.
One thing that I learned about the book that I was really, really surprised by was that Sun and Steel was written about Musashi.
It was, yeah. The title is from Sun and Steel is a book by Yukio Mishima, who was a fairly controversial figure because he was one of Japan's great poets, but he was also a bit of a right-wing nutcase, and eventually was disemboweled and had himself decapitated
you
whilst
wrote about
trying.
that in the book too, yeah.
Well, yeah, whilst trying to not exactly stage a coup, because it wasn't credible, but he was basically having a big kind of narcissistic blowout against decadent Japanese society, which involved him disemboweling himself with a samurai sword song and having his head chopped off by his assistant.
You
You can't go into a great deal of depth about his life in 3.5 minutes, really, But it is about him. It's not about Mishima.
During the first couple of years of touring, you suffered a bunch of setbacks physically. Herniated discs, paralysis of limbs, laryngitis, and bacterial bronchitis just in the first couple of years.
First year, I think.
What kept you going during those years?
Oh, you just, I mean, what's the expression? You're just extremely young and full of piss and vinegar. And you're 22, 23 years old. You're unstoppable, that's why it's good to do rock and roll tours, or at least get the first bits of rock and roll touring out the way when you are young, because that's when all the things are going to happen to you, and that's when you can actually get better. Because as you get older, then when you do get sick, it takes longer to get better, and you really don't want to be having those injuries. So if you can learn from those early injuries, then you can try and prevent them later on.
Which is why we don't see you headbanging these days.
I don't bother doing any headbanging. That went well. Apart from the fact that I'm bouncing my brain around inside my skull, might knock some sense into me. Now, I've come away relatively unscathed. I mean, I know some people have got all their knees are crippled, and you only have to look at the consequences of some people playing sport. And they've got new hips and new knees and new this and that. And I've been extremely lucky that I've managed to come away with all my bits intact.
Was the first Rock in Rio still the craziest fan experience you've ever had in Iron Maiden?
Yes, unquestionably. I mean, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. Being besieged, quite literally, surrounded by hundreds of fans for a week.
Yeah.
And then the fans that weren't surrounding the hotel were in the surrounding tower blocks with paparazzi long lenses and things like that. It was crazy. It was very funny. I mean, It was kind of, after a while, if you thought about it for 5 minutes, might have gone stir crazy, but actually we'd just come from 6 foot deep snow in upstate New York and flown down to Brazil, where it was 90, 95 degrees, gorgeous sunshine.
After the Power Slave tour, you were thinking of quitting music entirely.
Yeah, I did think about that, yeah. I was just, I was very, very mentally exhausted by the whole, the grind, if you like, of grinding out 13 months on the road with no stable social life of any description, really. And people say, well, stop complaining, you're a rock star and you make all this money. I say, yeah, actually, I am. But therefore, if I decide to stop, it's my choice. So I did think about it. I thought that there were other things perhaps that I could do that earned much, much less money, but that would give me the same or greater level of satisfaction, because you were working with people one-on-one. I mean, I did quite seriously think about, going and becoming a full-time fencing coach. That's what excites me about anything. It's it's not the endlessly repetitive grind of doing it. So saying, okay, off you go. There's 300 shows. I'm like, okay. So what exactly do I get out of each show? Apart from lots of people going, yeah. But I'm not. My brain's not creaking and expanding. In fact, quite the contrary. After the first 100 or so, what are we doing extra? Okay, you're making money. Yeah, that's great, I suppose. But there's more to life than just that. And it's getting the balance right. And at the time, at the end of Power Slave, I just thought the balance had was way out of kilter for me. And we had 6 months off, and after 6 months I went, you know what, yeah, maybe I can start to see some sense of proportion here, you know. But it was very difficult to see how going on tour for another year at that stage in my life would be of any help to me at all, apart from making loads of money.
One great quote in here was about when you decided to quit Iron Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
And it was inspired by a Henry Miller quote.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
All growth is a leap in the dark, a spontaneous, unpremeditated act without the benefit of experience. And it was, were you reading that quote and then it just clicked?
What does this button do? I have no idea.
Exactly.
That's the whole point. And that's why you do it. That's why you push it. Funnily enough, when we went to the German publishers with the book, they had a real problem with the title. Because they said, we don't understand the title. I said, what, you mean that in Germany nobody would push a button if they didn't know what it did? I said, I get that. Or you know, or there would be a big sort of, you know, Achtung, verboten. Do not push this button unless you know what it does.
Yeah.
But actually in my world, that's exactly what I've done for my entire life.
Finally, back into Maiden again. You describe Rock in Rio 2001, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Beautifully in this book. Did that experience give you a deeper appreciation of the song Fear of the Dark? I'm
constantly thinking of ways to try and make each incarnation of it ever so slightly different. I'm coming to the conclusion that the next time I do it, I'm going to have to be quite serious about it, because some of it is quite, there was a couple of tours I was mucking about quite a lot on it.
Okay.
So people down the front row would realise that I was actually doing all kinds of funny little hand signals and things. So I was actually miming the words, you know. But I think if you do songs too much too often, you end up trying to. It's hard to rediscover them, frankly.
Sure.
And that is always that is a problem, I think, on Fear of the Dark, just for me anyway, because it's like it's Fear of the Dark, you know. And then after Fear of the Dark, it'll be the big monster, you know.
Yeah.
And actually at that point you're almost thinking throwing forward to the encores in your mind, because they're probably a bit different.
In your book, you say that Iron Maiden don't write love songs. And I would say that's true.
Kind of.
But if I could put one to you.
Yeah.
When the Wild Wind Blows.
Yes, that is very poignant, actually. I mean, it's quite tragic.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, it doesn't have a happy ending.
No.
No. Quite the opposite, you know. It's a tragic, doomed, star-crossed lovers, you know, relationship, you know, in which they make a terrible mistake. In fact, it's thinking about it, really, it's kind of like a geriatric Romeo and Juliet.
It is a bit like that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they take their own lives.
They take their own lives by mistake. Yeah.
Mistaken earthquake. For
yeah.
The fallout.
Except there's none of the family issue behind it, you know. But the end, the denouement is actually Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. To me, that's always felt like a beautiful love song, as well as an apocalyptic adventure at the same time.
Yeah. Yes.
But anyway, Bruce, thank you so much for giving me your time
Great.
today. It's greatly appreciated. The new book, What Does This Button Do? Pick this thing up. Learn more about this man right here, Bruce Dickinson. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, mate. Cheers.